SpaceX has been trying to improve and strengthen their internet service for a long time now, and that includes offering its services in multiple other countries. They have been having some really great success, but Iran was taking quite a while to confirm their next expansion. Now the contracts have been signed, and they can now offer themselves in Iran. So stay tuned, as we are going to discuss this brand new venture. First up, the US allows tech firms, SpaceX's Starlink, to expand internet services to Iran. It now seems like the White House has finally responded to Iran's efforts to restrict internet access. They have done this by permitting tech companies to expand their online services within the country. The current administration is doing so through a brand new Treasury Department titled General License. This brand new department is going to permit multiple US tech companies to deliver different types of communication services, such as video conferencing software, online gaming, as well as social media apps. This new license basically created an exemption to the US sanctions against the country, which have previously barred multiple different types of technology sales throughout Iran. We are taking this step against a stark backdrop, US Secretary of State Antony Blinken said in a statement. The Iranian government has cut off access to the internet for most of its 80 million citizens to prevent them and the world from watching its violent crackdown on peaceful protesters. One company already seems ready to serve users in Iran. On Friday, SpaceX CEO Elon Musk tweeted, activating Starlink, a reference to the company's satellite internet service, which can supply high-speed broadband to many locations across the planet. Days earlier, Musk said he wanted to bring Starlink to Iran, tweeting, Starlink will ask for an exemption to Iranian sanctions in this regard. Responses to this new project. In response to all of this, Elon Musk himself tweeted out, activating Starlink. Originally, SpaceX did not immediately respond for comment, as they also made it unclear how they will offer their Starlink services to the country and when. The technology itself could provide local users with a way to bypass Iran's current strict online censorship. This is obviously assuming that they can even get their hands on a Starlink-compatible dish. However, Iran's government will likely prevent the use of SpaceX's Starlink dishes in the country, as well as stopping others from selling them. This then means that local users will be forced to resort to smuggling the different hardware into the country. In the meantime, however, Iran has recently begun restricting access to apps like WhatsApp, as well as Instagram. They then went ahead and shut down multiple different cellular providers, according to internet monitoring groups such as NetBlock. Iran has also blocked the different encrypted chat apps such as Signal, which led to multiple different companies creating a workaround by establishing proxy servers in the country. All of these crackdowns are happening throughout the time where Iran is facing one of its highest-growing anti-government protests in history. This began a few weeks back after 22-year-old Mahsa Amini died in Tehran because of suspicious circumstances. From what her family said on the matter, she was arrested for wearing her hijab improperly and then beaten by the morality police within Iran. This led to her untimely death. Local police are claiming that she merely suffered from a heart attack during the altercation. This triggered protests within Iran that have led to multiple different violent clashes with government forces throughout the country. More than 30 people have now been killed, whilst hundreds have been injured, according to the Washington Post. The U.S. Deputy Secretary of Treasury said on Friday that the United States is doubling down on its support for the free flow of information to the Iranian people. The department itself also hinted that they could create further exemptions within Iran and their sanctions to allow more information to flow freely within the country. And that's all we have on this piece of information for today's video. It's crazy that Iran is stopping so much within their country, but it's awesome to see companies like SpaceX finally be allowed to introduce Starlink to this country. Starlink is a phenomenal system and should provide some great internet connection for those in Iran and allow free flow of information throughout it. Please let us know down in the comments section below your thoughts on all of this, as well as what you think about Starlink in current society. And now on to some other SpaceX news from over the last few weeks to wrap up today's video. Next up, entrepreneur Dennis Tito books another spaceflight around the moon with SpaceX. More than 2 decades have now passed since entrepreneur Dennis Tito became the first person to pay for his own ride in space. In fact, he spent around 1 week on the International Space Station for his money. After that phenomenal event, he pioneered a mission aboard a Soyuz vehicle. Since then, he has said that he has always desired to return to space, with a preference for flying to the moon in most recent times. This thought has remained mostly dormant in his life, as he did not have confidence in other companies that have spaceflight vehicles available for such a mission. However, that seemingly changed around a year and a half ago, when he and his wife visited the headquarters of SpaceX in Hawthorne, California. After their tour, they discussed possible space tourism trips with the company, and it did not take long for a lunar idea to come up. The question was, was, would Tito be interested in riding aboard SpaceX's Starship vehicle for an awesome trip around the moon? Dennis Tito said that he and his wife looked at each other and they knew right away. He said, "Yes, I want to go," and that we both wanted to go. 3 missions and counting. They announced a few weeks back that they had purchased 2 of the dozen seats available for the next SpaceX planned circumlunar flight later on in this decade. Yes, that's right. He won't be able to get on the SpaceX ship until the end of this decade. The public announcement came on social media, and this now confirms that Akiko Tito, Dennis's wife, will be the first woman to fly on a Starship. The flight is going to last around a week, outbound to the moon, and pass within 40 kilometers of the surface, then fly back to Earth. 10 other seats are now available for the Starship and remain unsold currently. Many people had asked Tito how much they paid for their tickets, but he said he was not at liberty to disclose the price he paid during the SpaceX transaction. This brings the manifest of private human space flights on Starship and its super heavy rocket to 3. There is billionaire Jarek Isaacman's Polaris 3 mission, likely to low Earth orbit, which will be followed by Japanese billionaire Yusaku Maezawa's Dear Moon flight, the first human Starship flight around the moon. Then comes Tito and the second circumlunar mission. SpaceX has also contracted with NASA to fly the first human landing on the moon as part of the Artemis program. But for now, NASA astronauts will launch on a separate rocket and rendezvous with Starship in lunar orbit to go down to the lunar surface and back to orbit. So far, NASA hasn't announced plans to launch astronauts from Earth on Starship or land them back here. After Dennis Tito's first trip to space in around April 2001, 6 other people launched on the same ship through 2009. These trips cost between $20 million to $30 million for a trip. Then surprisingly enough, for a decade afterward, there was no space tourism at all. He said that he hoped to influence and allow the spaceflight industry to blossom, but somehow didn't happen. At that time, an orbital trip around the moon came down to around $1 million per person, so it was much more affordable for those who actually had the chance. He did an interview a few years back saying that the industry dried up and nothing happened. He said that he thought there would be hundreds of people wanting to go and get a chance to head into space, and that it was very disappointing for him. In recent years, there has been a sudden development in reusability, and he says that he thinks it's finally happening and that he and his wife are just as excited as can be. He said that Starship could be the vehicle that opens access to even more people. There is obviously an additional 10 people on the dozen capacity for the first lunar missions, and he said that other spacious vehicles could accommodate dozens more people. This is also especially true for trips just around Earth's orbit, rather than heading off to the moon. What do you think of all of this? Please let us know down in the comments section below. It's going to take a while for that to happen, and it also means that some more people have to go first before a fully reusable Starship in large volumes can be created. We hope that happens soon though, as it's an awesome feat for humanity. And that's the end of today's video. Hopefully you enjoyed this latest video. If you did, would you please let us know down in the comments section below? It would be very helpful. Make sure to like the video, comment down below, and of course subscribe to the channel with the notification bell rung. Thank you for watching today's video. Bye!